A former police chief dubbed the Devil in the Ozarks escapes from prison in a disguise, cutting his decades-long prison sentence short. I look at the manhunt for Grant Hardin and how he was literally able to walk out of prison. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy, and I just want to remind you that Crime Fix is now available, both video and audio, on Spotify, so you can check us out, watch us, and listen to us there, so give us a follow. The search is on in Arkansas for an escaped inmate. He walked out of the Calico Rock North Central Unit. Arkansas State Police and local law enforcement are doing everything they can to capture 56-year-old Grant Hardin. No one has seen Hardin since around 3:40 p.m. on Sunday, May 25th. He was just 8 years into a 30-year sentence for murder. The Stone County Sheriff's Office released a statement warning the community to not approach Hardin, calling him dangerous, and asking anyone with information about where he might be to call the sheriff's office. Several local law enforcement agencies are assisting the Arkansas Department of Corrections in the manhunt. Originally, Hardin pleaded guilty to the shooting death of 59-year-old James Appleton. And while he was serving his sentence for that first-degree murder charge, guess what? DNA samples actually linked him to a cold case. It was a 1997 rape of an elementary school teacher in Rogers, Arkansas. Can you believe that? A man who was a police chief had raped a woman and gotten away with it for years. Since police applied for a John Doe warrant in 2003 with those DNA samples taken from the victim's clothes, investigators were able to secure a match when Grant Hardin was imprisoned for James Appleton's murder. There aren't many details released, but police did say that Grant Hardin escaped through the Sally Port wearing a uniform that looked a lot like a Department of Corrections uniform, but it wasn't an actual prison guard's uniform. Updates regarding the investigation have been posted on X. One read, as of 11:30 p.m. on Sunday, May 25th, the search for inmate Grant Hardin, ADC number 168541, is ongoing. The search is a joint effort including the Department of Corrections, Arkansas State Police, and local and state law enforcement offices. It has been determined that Hardin was wearing a makeshift outfit designed to mimic law enforcement when he escaped the North Central Unit. He was not wearing a Department of Corrections uniform, and all DOC-issued equipment has been accounted for. Now, if all the DOC-issued equipment has been accounted for, it could be Grant Hardin's background in law enforcement that gave him the knowledge and resources to make this uniform. But still, how was he able to pull this off? This raises a lot of questions. According to police, Grant Hardin has worked in at least 4 separate law enforcement departments in Northwest Arkansas. The former Benton County prosecutor, Nathan Smith, who helped put Hardin behind bars, reminds the public of the dangerous acts he is capable of committing, referring to him as a sociopath. I mean, the man is intimidating, clocking in at 6 feet tall and 259 pounds. This is a Law and Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to these outcomes. Morgan & Morgan is stepping in to fight to hold food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they are ready to stand up for families that deserve justice. So if your child under age 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, visit www.forthepeople.com/food or scan the QR code on your screen to learn more. Family members of the victims expressed concern after news broke of Grant Hardin's escape, since they were witnesses in his court proceeding, tearing open old wounds that his captivity helped heal. Authorities are using canines, drones, helicopters, everything they can to enhance their search efforts for this dangerous escapee who's still on the loose. This escape comes just weeks after 10 inmates broke out of a New Orleans state prison. 8 of those 10 have since been captured and rearrested, some even caught across state lines in Walker County, Texas. The group of inmates escaped through a faulty cell door, squeezing through a hole behind the toilet, before scaling a barbed wire fence and running into the darkness. Jail staff did not report their absence until the morning head count. but also their note, "Too easy, LOL," was a dead giveaway. Since that breakout, Louisiana state and city officials have pointed the finger at jail security, while some indications lead to the escape potentially being an inside job. 4 days earlier, during the city's capital improvement plan hearing, the chief of corrections for the jail actually presented a need for a new lock system. So, to talk about this manhunt, I want to bring in somebody who's actually been behind prison walls before. He is Justin Paperny. He is a prison consultant. So, Justin, what were your first thoughts when you heard about this Grant Hardin, a former police chief who's serving time not only for murder, but for rape? The fact that he is able to put some type of makeshift like law enforcement corrections officer outfit together and then just kind of waltz out of the prison. It just seems to me absolutely stunning.
It's nuts. It continues to happen. My first thoughts are the victims who had clarity by at least knowing he would serve the rest of his life in prison. Now they're being re-victimized again, and they're wondering, is this sicko coming for us? So many of these cases we talk about, even Diddy and others, is like alleged, hasn't been convicted yet. We should be cautious about what we're saying. Everyone has a right to a jury trial. This guy pled guilty, convicted. He's a murderer, should spend the rest of his life in prison. So my first thoughts, the victims, they are scared. I don't blame them. And it is another breakdown of corrections. They have an inability to do their job, which is to warehouse and watch people who have been convicted of violent crimes. It's the victims I think about.
And the victims here are pretty upset and frightened. One of them in particular, Cheryl Tillman, the sister of the murder victim, she's like, I mean, can you imagine? You think that the person who murdered your brother is behind bars forever, and then you get a notice that, oops, he escaped, and he didn't just like this. We're not talking about like some craziness where Shawshank Redemption stuff where somebody fashions some crazy plan where they cut through a wall or something, where like, which this is a crazy plan. This guy is somehow able, Justin, to put together some sort of outfit that resembles a law enforcement outfit and a uniform. And the prison is saying, this is not a law enforcement uniform. So, where on earth does this guy get a black shirt, something that looks enough like he could have been a corrections officer to walk out of the prison and actually get out of the walls? Actually, because I would think if you're leaving a prison, you'd have to show some credentials or something. You can't just like drive out of there.
Well, as we saw in the New Orleans escape, it took several hours before they knew those 10 prisoners had escaped. So he has some inside knowledge of how the prisons work. Also, you might have some staff members who are sympathetic to the fact that he's law enforcement. He went on, I read, to say that he blamed his federal public defender or his lawyer in this case for the guilty plea. He wanted to undo it. There could be some sympathetic staff there that enables it or at least turns the other way from it. So there could have been a little help from the inside. Hardly a day passes or a year passes without some guard helping some prisoner do something wrong. Then, even if you're in a really high secure environment, even in a penitentiary or a state penitentiary, when you're dealing with a killer and mass and a murderer, and they are compelled to do anything to try to get out of there, even the most secure prison won't confine them, especially if you have breakdown in staffing, if protocols aren't followed. I've said on Law&Crime before, it's hard to get people to work in prisons. It's one thing to say you're going to have protocols. It's another to actually follow them. And if you have someone whose only goal is to get out, he's going to find a weakness and exploit vulnerabilities within that prison. To the clothing, I presume over a sustained period of time, he was gathering clothes. When I was in prison, guys would take pants. You can, cut them and then make them shorts. Shirts eventually could become part of a beanie. Really creative dudes in federal and state prisons. So over time, he was acquiring garments that made him look more like staff. And like we saw in New Orleans, if he had a 3-hour window or a 2-hour window to get out, he took advantage of it. And I'm sure the blaming will come, as there is in every prison escape. Very little acceptance of responsibility. Very little, I own it. It's my fault. We'll do better. It's just going to be investigations, blaming, until we cover it again in 3 weeks with another case.
How does one collect clothes in prison? Because I would think that you have a commissary and that, they sell certain things. They sell sweatshirts. I would think you'd have your prison issued, um, jumpsuit or whatever, long johns for sale in the commissary, whatever. How on earth do you collect clothes that can pass for a law enforcement uniform?
Well, certainly you can purchase some things in the commissary. Also, some prisons are broke. Like in the federal system, you can only buy things in the commissary. That's all. Some states, you can actually mail packages to people who are in prison to help them keep costs down for the prisoners so they don't have to buy it in the commissary. People get transferred from prisons all across that state and end up there, and that prison might have a different uniform or wardrobe. So you'd be surprised at the all of the outfits and clothes that someone can compile over a very long prison term. And then, of course, the black market or underground economy is very alive in prison. You trade a book of stamps for a T-shirt, mackerel or tuna for a pair of tennis shoes, and then in time, and you get creative and you make it look similar to what guards would wear, and that's how these things like happen. And you have a lazy staff member who's not doing their job, who maybe is napping or turning the other way, or maybe in time we'll learn someone was involved in it, right? Facilitated it. Hell, people can be manipulated. Part of the reason people go to prison, they've manipulated and hurt people. He might have manipulated someone on the inside to help her at least turn the other way. I suspect we'll get to the bottom of it.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. You talked about earlier people turning and looking the other way, and now you've kind of circled back to that again. Wouldn't he have to have somebody on the inside potentially helping him? I'm not trying to say that had to have happened. I mean, but I guess I think it would have had to have happened because I'm looking at this and I think jail jumpsuits but I'm not looking and seeing that in the photograph that they've circulated in the media that they've put out. In the mug shots, I see a white, jumpsuit shirt, whatever you call those, the jail inmate suit, the shirt or whatever. And then I see this black shirt. And then I see a sign or, some type of marking on the back of it that looks kind of semi official. So to me, it almost seems like you'd maybe have to have somebody helping on the inside and then maybe some really lax protocols as you're exiting the prison to actually get out of there.
There's a good chance someone might have been manipulated and exploited by him and helped. If it wasn't deliberate, I'm going to open this door for you or do something to allow you to leave. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to turn the other way for a little while and I'm going to allow you to leave. So I think there's a good chance it was deliberate or sort of a willful blindness. I don't see nothing. You go. And to the back to the clothing for a moment. There's when you go to prison, they may give you the orange uniform, right? You see people go to court at MDC, they're wearing the shackles and chains and they're all locked up. Once you get inside the prison for a while, you're wearing in the federal prison system, it's the green uniform. Where I served time, it was khakis and a white t shirt. But you saw all sorts of clothes because people were transferring to this prison from all across the country, and you were allowed to wear it if it was transferred in from another prison. But then also, like Shawshank Redemption, where Andy Dufresne sneaks out and he's wearing the shoes that he had polished, and he says, "How often do you look at a man's shoes?" Right? You get conditioned to prison. It's the same job every single day, and you might not pay attention to details that otherwise should be right in front of you if you're doing your job.
So if you're in charge of the Arkansas Department of Corrections right now, this is not you know, somebody in there for a minor infraction. Not that that would be any, any that would be still very bad. You have any inmate escape, that's very bad. You have somebody who's in for murder. You have somebody in who raped somebody. This is a dangerous guy. They call him the devil of the Ozarks. I mean, scary stuff. And so now he's out on the loose and he's desperate. He doesn't want to go back. So, does he probably have somebody on the outside maybe helping him? And it kind of makes you wonder as a former police chief, does he know what to do to avoid getting caught?
So he will have an idea of how they would manage an investigation, what they would do next. He knows exactly who they're going to call, who they're going to speak with inside of the prison. He can reconstruct what's going to happen. There's no question. The longer he is free, the more dangerous he becomes because he's going to run out of resources, which could compel him to try to leverage off someone in his network, who eventually so many of these people help, they get arrested and they go to prison. Or he is a violent man who doesn't care about taking someone's life. And when you're desperate with very few resources, it could compel him to kill again, to kidnap, to do things that are devastating because he does not care about the lives of other people. You mentioned anyone shouldn't escape. But when I served time in a minimum security camp, you could walk off and they're not going to stop you. Eventually, they're going to find you, but you're in for a nonviolent white collar crime or a drug crime. This is different. The only job of corrections is security of the institution and control and to confine. And so many of these prisons, they fail in their only obligation. And in so doing, these victims are now re-victimized again. And I'm sure they're fearing for their own life. He could be coming for them, and they know that.
I contacted the Arkansas Department of Corrections. They're just saying he remains missing. They're doing everything they can to find him. I have to imagine, some heads are going to roll over this. This isn't, as I mentioned, this isn't somebody in there doing time for, this isn't a county jail, somebody doing time for shoplifting or something. Not that anybody would probably even do time for that. I mean, this is a convicted murderer and rapist.
I will say people attribute the problem to what's visible. In the New Orleans escape, there's a hole there. They should have fixed it. It's not the hole, it's the bureaucracy behind it. It's the protocols in place. It's the training of staff that would allow this to happen. It will be the same thing here. They will eventually find out what happened, but no one will really accept responsibility for it. It's just the blame game. And until someone says, I accept responsibility, here are new protocols, training that we're putting in place. And if people don't follow these protocols, we're going to let them go. The flip side of that is it's hard to get people to work in prisons for very little pay in a job that can create really big mental health issues because you're working in a prison. It ain't a normal job. That much I can tell you. We used to say in prison, we get a leave. This dude's here for the rest of his life. That it takes some time to adjust to that. They need more training, but they all say, we don't have the money for it. Let's just build more prisons. Only so much money.
Yeah, I've known people who worked in prisons. It's not pretty. It sounds like an awful, awful job. Just what does your gut tell you? Is somebody on the outside helping him?
Yes. I think, yes, that even people on death row who have served terrible violent crimes have people who I maintain their innocence. They were harmed or wronged by the system. Uh, a guy like this, who was in that position of authority for a long time, who would then go on and commit crimes, that tells me he's a narcissist. He can manipulate, he can connive, he can get people to do what he wants them to do, even if that person knows it's not in their interest to do it. So if he can get out of a prison and potentially con a guard to turn the other way, is it that unlikely that he's maybe found one or two people in the community willing to enable and help him and give him some money, a phone, a car, a ticket, something? Yeah, someone's helping him.
He raped somebody and went on to become a police chief. That's the thing that terrifies me. I mean, the murder is incredibly awful too. But the raping and then becoming a police chief, becoming, getting into a position of power, that's some scary stuff, Justin.
He's a killer. There's a reason some people should spend the rest of their life in a cage. They're scum, and this person is scum. He should not be free. This prison system did not do their job, and as a result of that, there is a chance people will continue to suffer, not just mentally, physically. They fail to do their job, and I'm surprised. I shouldn't say I'm surprised. There are so many of these jailbreaks we're covering. I mean, good God! At some point, it has to stop. Not until they make some major changes inside of these prisons and jails across the country.
Yeah, most definitely. Major, major issues. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. They'll probably catch him eventually. Just we'll have to wait and see how long it takes. Justin Paperny, thank you so much. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you for the invitation.
And just a reminder, anyone with information about Grant Hardin's whereabouts is asked to contact law enforcement immediately. So dial 911. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.